We're live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Live, India's voice to the world. I'm Nipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next 20 minutes. Prime Minister Narendra Modi en route to Maldives, the second leg of his two-nation visit. Trade deal, diplomatic reset on agenda. India and UK signed free trade agreement during Prime Minister Modi's visit to the country. Indian textile, gems and jewellery sectors to benefit, medical devices to get cheaper. Prime Minister Modi says outcomes of his UK visit will benefit the future generations and contribute to shared growth and prosperity, while Starmer calls it most significant deal since EU exit. Iran to hold nuke talks with European nations in Turkey today. Failure to resume negotiations would lead to international sanctions. Thailand-Cambodia conflict intensifies with fresh rocket strikes, at least 11 civilians killed. US calls for an immediate end to hostilities. UNSC to meet over the conflict. And Coronado Humpy sets up historic All-Indian Women's World Cup final. Will face 19-year-old Divya Deshmukh in the first ever Indian final showdown. And on to the details now. After concluding his successful UK visit, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is en route for Malé, the capital of the Maldives, as part of his two-nation tour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will arrive in Maldives on a state visit to the archipelago. During his two-day state visit, Prime Minister will hold key talks with President Dr. Mohammad Muizzu, focusing on enhancing cooperation in areas including connectivity, climate resilience, economic development and maritime security. This will be Prime Minister's third visit to Maldives and the first visit by a head of state or government to Maldives during the presidency of His Excellency Dr. Mohammad Muizzu. Prime Minister Modi will also attend the 60th anniversary of the independence of Maldives as the guest of honor. The visit promises to further solidify India's neighbourhood first policy and reinforce its role as a trusted development partner of the Maldives. Well, India and UK signed a trade deal on Thursday. Prime Minister Modi called it a historic day in India-UK relations. He said that Indian textiles, footwear, gems and jewellery, seafood and engineering goods will get better marketing access in the United Kingdom. The processed food industry will find new opportunities in the UK market too. For his part, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer said that the trade deal is the most significant agreement that the UK has made since leaving the European Union. He said that the deal will bring huge benefits to both the countries. Gautam Roy reports for more.
In a landmark moment for India-UK relations, New Delhi and London have officially signed the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, CETA. This historic accord ushers in a new era of strategic partnership, strengthening economic ties, streamlining trade processes and unlocking expansive investment opportunities across sectors.
यह समझौता मात्र आर्थिक साझेदारी नहीं, बल्कि साझा समृद्धि की योजना है। एक और भारतीय टेक्सटाइल, फुटवियर, जेम्स एंड ज्वेलरी, सी फूड और इंजीनियरिंग गुड्स को यूके में बेहतर मार्केट एक्सेस मिलेगा। भारत के एग्रीकल्चर प्रोड्यूस और प्रोसेस्ड फूड इंडस्ट्री के लिए यूके की मार्केट में नए अवसर बनेंगे।
Leaders from both sides hailed the agreement as a major milestone. They express confidence that CETA will create fresh avenues for trade and investment, drive economic growth, generate employment, and bring lasting benefits to both economies.
It's a deal that will bring huge benefits to both of our countries, boosting wages, raising living standards, and putting more money in the pockets of working people. It is good for jobs, it is good for business, cutting tariffs and making trade cheaper, quicker and easier.
The trade deal opens the doors of the UK's $37.5 billion agricultural market to Indian farmers, boosting exports of millets, jackfruit, herbs, and more, while safeguarding sensitive sectors like dairy and apples. For India's MSMEs, it unlocks access to trade finance, intellectual property protections, and UK procurement channels. Indian seafood will now enter the UK's $5.4 billion marine market, duty-free, supporting 28 million livelihoods. Leather and footwear exports are expected to cross $900 million, benefiting manufacturing hubs in Kanpur and Tirupur. In a strong push for inclusivity, the deal includes gender-focused provisions, empowering women artisans and self-help groups with duty-free access and skilling support. Services too get a boost, gaining visa clarity and greater mobility. India's youth stand to benefit from new job opportunities in the UK, particularly in IT, finance, and education. The two prime ministers also launched the UK-India Vision 2035, laying the roadmap for a future-ready strategic partnership. Using a cricket analogy, Prime Minister described the relationship as a high-scoring, solid partnership, a bond built on trust, shared values, and mutual ambition.
For both of us, cricket is not just a game, but a passion. And also a great metaphor for our partnership. There may be a swing and a miss at times, but we always play with a straight bat. We are committed to building high-scoring, solid partnership.
UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer called it the biggest trade deal signed by the UK since Brexit, a powerful statement of confidence in India's growing global role and economic potential.
This is the biggest and most economically significant trade deal that the UK has made since leaving the EU. Thank you, Prime Minister, for your leadership and for your pragmatism. And I'd like to thank everybody who's worked so hard to get this deal over the line.
Years in the making, this long-awaited pact marks a turning point in India-UK economic relations. With inputs from Gautam Roy in London, Bureau Report, DD India.
And earlier in London, in a gesture emblematic of the strengthening India-UK ties and shared ecological values, King Charles III hosted Prime Minister Modi at Sandringham House. The meeting underscored their enduring commitment to global climate action and cultural collaboration. Prime Minister Modi gifted King Charles a symbolic tree sapling as part of India's growing green movement called Ek Ped Maa Ke Naam. The initiative encourages people to plant a tree in tribute to their mother. And sharing highlights of his visit on social media, Prime Minister Narendra Modi termed his UK visit very important. Prime Minister Modi said the outcomes of this visit will benefit the future generations of both the nations and contribute to shared growth and prosperity. Prime Minister Modi also expressed gratitude to his counterpart Keir Starmer, the UK government and the people for their warmth.
हमारे संबंधों में एक ऐतिहासिक दिवस है। मुझे प्रसन्नता है कि कई वर्षों की मेहनत के बाद आज दोनों देशों के बीच कॉम्प्रिहेंसिव इकोनॉमिक एंड ट्रेड एग्रीमेंट संपन्न हुआ है।
This is the biggest and most economically significant trade deal that the UK has made since leaving the EU. That it's one of the most comprehensive deals that India has ever done. So thank you, Prime Minister, for your leadership and for your pragmatism.
यह समझौता मात्र आर्थिक साझेदारी नहीं, बल्कि साझा समृद्धि की योजना, इसे दोनों के सर्विस सेक्टर, विशेषकर टेक्नोलॉजी और फाइनेंस के उसको एक नई ऊर्जा मिलेगी। ईज ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस को गति मिलेगी, कॉस्ट ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस घटेगा और कॉन्फिडेंस ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस बढ़ेगा। हम एक मत है कि आतंकवाद के खिलाफ लड़ाई में दोहरे मापदंडों का कोई स्थान नहीं है। हम इस बात पर भी सहमत है कि एक्सट्रीमिस्ट विचारधारा वाली शक्तियों को डेमोक्रेटिक फ्रीडम का दुरुपयोग नहीं करने दिया जा सकता। Those who misuse democratic freedoms to undermine democracy itself must be held account. For both of us, cricket is not just a game, but a passion and also a great metaphor for our partnership. There may be a swing and a miss at times, but we always play with a straight bat. We are committed to building high-scoring, solid partnership.
And moving on the fifth day of a month-long monsoon session of Parliament, the Upper House to take up the Carriage of Goods by Sea Bill 2025 for consideration and passing. Bill to provide for the responsibilities, liabilities, rights and immunities attached to carriers with respect to the carriage of goods by sea. The Coastal Shipping Bill 2025 will also be taken for consideration and passing. Bill to consolidate and amend the law relating to regulation of coastal shipping, promote coasting trade and encourage domestic participation. Well, in Lok Sabha, or the lower house of the Parliament, reports of Standing Committee on Communications and Information Technology, report of Standing Committee on Rural Development and Panchayati Raj will be presented. The readjustment or representation of scheduled tribes and assembly constituencies of the State of Goa Bill 2024 will be taken up for consideration and passing. Well, the Merchant Shipping Bill 2024 to consolidate and amend the law relating to merchant shipping will also be discussed. And still to come in this edition of DD India Live. India and United States recall delegations from Gaza ceasefire talks amid accusations against Hamas. UK and Australia hold strategic talks in Sydney to advance AUKUS submarine deal and boost defence ties. And Deputy US Attorney General meets Maxwell in prison. Lawyer calls it very productive.
Jharkhand will mesmerize you with majestic nature, rich heritage and colorful culture.
Johar. Johar. It fits perfectly.
Thank you.
Full workout हो गया.
Ready?
Postcards from Jharkhand on National Geographic.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Lupakshi Khurana, and moving on, the China-Europe CEO Roundtable was held in Beijing on Thursday, bringing together around 60 major companies, highlighting the strong complementarities between the two sides' industries. Well, leaders of the firms, including French state-owned electric utility EDF and the Netherlands-based global tech company Philips, alongside Chinese counterparts, emphasized China's importance as a key market. Many expressed confidence in China's economic development path and optimism about future collaboration opportunities. At the event, many guests expressed hope that China and the EU would continue to deepen and expand their cooperation. And Iran is ready to engage in talks with the United States on its nuclear program, but only if Washington takes meaningful steps to rebuild trust. Well, Iran is set to meet on Friday in Istanbul with Britain, France and Germany, known as the E3 nations, and the European Union's Deputy Foreign Policy Commissioner. Friday's talks will be held at the deputy ministerial level. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Kazem Garibabadi said that to enter negotiations, Iran sought several key principles to be upheld. Also, Iranian officials have warned that a move to reimpose sanctions would have consequences. Garibabadi said earlier this week that it could force Tehran to withdraw from key non-proliferation agreements. This will be the first talk since Iran's 12-day conflict with Israel in June, which involved US B-52 bombers striking nuclear facilities in Iran. A similar meeting was held in Istanbul in May. And some updates from West Asia now. Israel and the United States recalled their delegation from Gaza ceasefire talks for consultations on Thursday. U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff blamed Hamas for failing to reach a deal. In a social media post, Witkoff said mediators had made a great effort, but Hamas does not appear to be coordinated or acting in good faith. He further added that U.S. will consider alternative options to bring the hostages home and try to create a more stable environment for the people of Gaza. Also, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said his government was still seeking a ceasefire despite recalling its negotiators from Doha, accusing Hamas of blocking an agreement. Also, the withdrawal marked the latest setback in efforts to secure a deal that would bring a ceasefire to Gaza and secure the release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas still. And French President Emmanuel Macron said on Thursday France will recognize a Palestinian state in September at the United Nations General Assembly, adding that he hoped it would bring peace to the region. Macron published a letter sent to Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas confirming France's intention to become the first major Western power to recognize a Palestinian state. France will become the first major Western country to recognize a Palestinian state, potentially giving greater momentum to a movement so far dominated by smaller nations that are generally more critical of Israel. The decision is likely to spark anger in Israel and Washington. In a diplomatic cable in June, the United States said it opposed any steps that would unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. And Thailand deployed an F-16 fighter jet to attack Cambodian military positions on Thursday, following artillery exchanges between the two Southeast Asian neighbors that left at least 12 dead, marking a rare armed conflict over disputed border areas. Well, Thailand also reported 31 injuries across 3 provinces, while Cambodian casualties remained unclear. Cambodia's government spokesperson accused Thailand's army of attacking 8 locations with heavy weaponry and airstrikes during a Thursday news conference. Thailand's military said the use of air power was to strike with precision, while Cambodia's foreign ministry described Thailand's measures as reckless and brutal military aggression. The UN Security Council will address the conflict on Friday. Tensions have risen since a Cambodian soldier's death in May, prompting troop buildups and a diplomatic crisis that nearly collapsed Thailand's fragile coalition government. While Thailand's acting Prime Minister Phumtham Vechayachai emphasized Thailand's commitment to peace, but said the country had to respond to provocation in self-defense.
នៅថ្ងៃនេះការបើកការវាយប្រហារមានចំនួន8ទីតាំងទីតាំងទី1ប្រាសាទតំបន់ថងទីតាំងទី2ប្រាសាទតាកបីទីតាំងទី3តំបន់ភ្នំទ្រាប់ទីតាំងទី4វាលន្ត្រីទី5តាថាវទី6ភ្នំខ្មោចទី7អានសេះអូកាស្នេហ៍និងទី8តំបន់មុំបីនៅក្នុងនោះផងដែរក្រោយការបើកការវាយប្រហារយ៉ាងសន្ធាប់នៅក្នុងទីតាំងមួយចំនួនរហូតដល់ការប្រើអាវុធធុនធ្ងន់និងឈានដល់ការប្រើនៅយន្តហោះចម្បាំង F-16 ទម្លាក់គ្រាប់នៅក្នុងតំបន់នៃខេត្តព្រះវិហារយ៉ាងគំហុកគឺនៅក្នុងតំបន់ចំការជែកប៉ុន្តែអ្វីដែលយើងអាចបញ្ជាក់បាននៅពេលនេះ គឺកងកម្លាំងប្រដាប់អាវុធកម្ពុជានៅឈរយ៉ាងរឹងមាំនិងច្បាស់លាស់និងរក្សា 100% នៅក្នុងការការពារដែនអធិបតេយ្យភាពកម្ពុជាដោយមិនរួញរានិងមិនខ្លាចអំពើឈ្លានពានរបស់ភាគីថៃទេ
Well, Thailand and Cambodia have bickered for decades over jurisdiction of various under-marketed points along their 817-kilometer land border, with ownership of the ancient Hindu temple Tao Muan Thom and the 11th century Priya Vihar central to the disputes. Priya Vihar was awarded to Cambodia by the International Court of Justice in 1962, but tension escalated in 2008 after Cambodia attempted to list it as a UNESCO World Heritage List, leading to years of clashes and at least a dozen deaths. Meanwhile, the United States called for an immediate end to hostilities, protection of civilians and a peaceful resolution of the conflict there.
We are also gravely concerned by the escalating violence along the Thailand-Cambodia border and deeply saddened by reports of harm to civilians. The United States urges an immediate cessation of hostilities, protection of civilians, and a peaceful resolution of the conflict.
And moving on, U.S. President Donald Trump said on Thursday it is not necessary to fire Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell and that such a step would mark a big move. Trump has repeatedly demanded that Fed Chair Jerome Powell slash U.S. interest rates and has frequently raised the possibility of firing him, though Trump said on Thursday he would not make that move.
No, there's no pressure. No. We want to have, his term comes up soon. I think he's going to do the right thing. Everybody knows what the right thing is. Even people that believed in, the higher rates, they're all on board. They all want to see the interest rates come down.
While Trump visited the site of a $2.5 billion renovation of two buildings at the Fed's headquarters in Washington, Trump and Powell sparred face-to-face over the cost of renovations of the central bank's Washington headquarters, with the Fed leader saying the president was wrong about the cost of the overall. The White House has criticized the renovation as overly costly, escalating tensions between the administration and the independent overseer of the nation's monetary policy. And Australia and Britain's defence and foreign ministers arrived for talks in Sydney on Friday on boosting cooperation, including deepening the two countries' commitment to the AUKUS nuclear submarine partnership. Britain's Foreign Minister David Lammy and Defence Secretary John Healey was met by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese in Sydney, where talks are expected to focus on boosting trade ties and progressing the AUKUS partnership of Britain and Australia to build a new class of nuclear-powered submarine. The United States is reviewing the trilateral agreement struck in 2021 and has pressed Australia to increase defence spending to counter China's military build-up in the Indo-Pacific region. Britain has significantly increased its participation in the exercise co-hosted by Australia and the United States, with 3,000 troops taking part. And a top U.S. Justice Department official spent hours on Thursday grilling Ghislaine Maxwell, the imprisoned accomplice of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, as President Donald Trump struggles to tamp down a furor over his handling of the explosive case. David Marcus, Maxwell's attorney, said he was not going to comment on the substance of the meeting with Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, Trump's former personal lawyer for his hush money trial in two federal criminal cases. Maxwell is serving a 20-year sentence after being convicted in 2021 of recruiting underage girls for Epstein, who died in a New York jail in 2019 while awaiting trial in his own sex trafficking case. And on to some business news now. The International Monetary Fund has announced a deal with the Argentine government as part of the first review of a $20 billion loan program, paving the way for a $2 billion disbursement. This second loan tranche is still subject to approval by the IMF Executive Board, which is due to meet by the end of the month. It would bring the total amount available to Argentina under the program announced in April to around $14 billion. It highlighted an exchange rate managed at expected levels and an easing of inflation, which reached 39.4% year-on-year at the end of June, compared with 117.8% at the end of 2024. IMF also cited Argentina's return to international financial markets after Moody's upgraded its rating earlier this month. The IMF loan was part of a $42 billion bailout that also included funding from the World Bank and the Inter-American Development Bank. And on to some sports news, an historic moment for Indian chess. Humpy is set to face Divya in the final of the FIDE Women's Chess World Cup in Georgia. The clash marks a significant milestone, with two Indian players reaching the final of one of the most prestigious global tournaments in women's chess. Humpy is a veteran and former world rapid champion, while Divya, a rising star, continues her impressive run on the global stage. The final not only highlights India's growing dominance in women's chess, but also showcases the strength of its next generation of talent. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India Live. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Live.